you mind if I mean, you don't have to answer. That's your God-given right not to answer, but...
Constitutional right.
Well, the Constitution was inspired by God, wasn't it?
Well, I got to agree with you there.
Because in the Constitution, doesn't it say that our rights are bestowed upon us by our Creator, our inalienable rights?
You're my type of guy.
So, I'm just curious, because you got me curious, because this has never happened to me on an inspection or a traffic stop before.
Okay.
So I've had people videotape me, but not to the extent that you are.
All right.
So I'm just curious. What's up? Like, is something bothering you?
Donald Trump, the multi-millionaire real estate developer, is sounding more like a politician these days than America's most grandiose and controversial builder. When he disagrees with a matter of policy, he does it in a big way. Today, he sunk $95,000 into a full-page newspaper ad appearing in many papers criticizing the administration's foreign policy. Rumblings in the Trump camp point as far as the presidency. Could the Manhattan magnate be eyeing the White House, or is he just calling a bluff? Are you a Republican, Donald?
I'm a Republican, yes.
So if there were politics, it would be as a Republican?
It would be, I guess, as a Republican, but I don't see that there will be politics.
Why the ad, then? I mean, you said you wanted to say it. There's a lot of ways you can say things. I guess an ad is one way. You could have called up shows like this who would have been trying to have you come on. Why now?
Well, it was very easy. I was tired, and I think a lot of people are tired of watching other countries ripping off the United States. This is a great country. They laugh at us. Behind our backs, they laugh at us because of our own stupidity and the leaders. I mean, what we have a Persian Gulf situation. You saw what happened today. Billions and billions of dollars are being spent on getting oil for Japan, and they're not paying anything for it. Essentially, they're paying nothing for it. We have tankers going back and forth that our men are protecting, losing their lives. I mean, they're losing their lives, Larry. We're spending billions and billions on protection, and those tankers are going over to Japan. It's just preposterous. I watched the Kuwaiti oil minister the other day laughing as he was explaining how much money they intend to make with the Bridgeton, which has been a total disaster, the Bridgeton. And I said to myself, isn't that a shame? He's talking about how much money they're going to make, and here we are. He's smiling and laughing. Why don't we get some of it? Why is it that we're protecting? We have frogmen, we have helicopters, we have aircraft carriers, and all sorts of ships all over the Persian Gulf, so that this man and his little group can make a lot of money. I think it's ridiculous.
Well, one of the reasons we say we're doing it is because we've been doing it, and that all previous presidents have endorsed doing it. I guess the kind of thinking of an entrepreneur is because somebody else said it was right doesn't make it right, right?
Larry, the country is losing $200 billion a year. $200 billion. This country cannot continue to lose $200 billion. Japan is one of the wealthiest machines ever created. Saudi Arabia, and it's not, hey, let me tell you, I'm a big beneficiary of Japan. They buy my apartments in spades. They're fine people. But they're laughing to themselves as to what's happening over here. We're not kidding ourselves. They're laughing to themselves, Larry, as to what's happening with this country.
But Donald, a lot of people feel the way you feel, and a lot of people maybe with as much money, or certainly some people with as much money feel the way you feel. Why did you go public?
Because somebody had to, Larry. I watch it again, and it's a very important point. Japan is a money machine. Saudi Arabia is a money machine. Kuwait, these are money machines, the greatest ever created. The United States is, if it were a corporation, it would be bankrupt. It's losing $200 billion a year. For years now it's been losing that. What right do we have to go out and defend? Why aren't these countries, these wealthy money machines, paying us for the defense of their freedom and their nations? Why aren't they paying us?
We are kind of the world's keeper, are we not?
I don't believe we should be. I think Japan should certainly make a contribution. Japan is one of the reasons they're so successful is they don't have to worry about defense, because why should they worry about defense when the United States will do it for nothing? I mean, it's crazy. Saudi Arabia, I mean, you saw what happened with Saudi Arabia. We're going through the Gulf. We have old-fashioned, obsolete minesweepers. We ask Saudi Arabia for the use of their minesweepers, which are the best made, the most modern, the best, and they say no. Who are they to tell us no? We're not going to give you our minesweepers. It's ridiculous. They're only there for the sake of us as far as that's concerned. We are protective of Saudi Arabia. They should pay for that.
Are we going to be hearing more from Mr. Trump on issues like this as we go along?
I really don't know, Larry. This is an issue that's been bothering me. It's been bothering a lot of people that I know, and I think it's an issue that had to be brought out to the fore. The concept of America financing and paying and losing lives for countries that won't even allow us to use their ships. And these are the countries that in 24 hours they'd be wiped off the face of the earth if it weren't for America. It's ridiculous.
By the way, a couple of other things, then we'll take some calls for Donald Trump. Is it true that you're going to go to New Hampshire in October at the invitation of Mike Dunbar, who's heading a group called Draft Donald Trump?
Well, I was asked about 3 or 4 weeks ago whether or not, by a very good friend of mine, whether or not I'd go to New Hampshire. That's turned out to be now a much bigger deal than I had ever anticipated. And perhaps, I don't know, I am going. I made the commitment to go. I made the commitment about 3 weeks ago, and I will go, yes.
You will go, even though you realize now, in just stepping foot in that state, people are going to presume things.
Well, they can presume whatever they want. I have no intention of running for president, but I'd like the point to get across that we have a great country, but it's not going to be great for long if we're going to continue to lose $200 billion a year. You're going to get into the early 90s, 1990, 1991, and the whole thing's going to blow because this country cannot continue to support Japan and Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and many other countries that are much wealthier than we are. We're not a wealthy country. You can't be a wealthy country when you're losing the kind of money that we're losing.
We're a debtor country.
A massive federal debt is nothing new, but how they deal with it today is totally different. President Thomas Jefferson faced a huge national debt when he took office in 1800. But he and his fellow Democrat Republicans in Congress knocked about $26 million off the debt in his 2 terms in office. This despite taking on an additional $13 million of added debt for the Louisiana Purchase. How did they do it? Well, it's pretty simple. They cut spending and applied the savings to pay down debt. They made cuts even with a federal workforce totaling just 130 employees. Without much room there, Jefferson went to where the money was being spent, the military. He argued that funding a standing army in peacetime was a colossal waste of money. In his 1801 address, Jefferson wrote, "Sound principles will not justify our taxing the industry of our fellow citizens to accumulate treasure for wars to happen we know not when, and which might not perhaps happen but from the temptations offered by that treasure." During Jefferson's tenure, Congress reduced the size of the Army and Navy and reduced the number of foreign embassies to only 3, Britain, France, and Spain. All of these spending cuts freed up about $7 million in revenue annually. Treasury Secretary Albert Gallatin used the surplus to pay down the debt. On top of it, Congress even reduced taxes, eliminating the hated whiskey tax, along with other internal taxes. There's a basic lesson here. If you want to reduce debt, you have to make government smaller.
According to the U.S. Treasury Department, the U.S. is more than $19 trillion in debt. But who does the U.S. actually owe? The largest debt is to American citizens and U.S. entities, more than $14 trillion. The rest consists of foreign holders, beginning with China at more than $1.15 trillion. Japan is a close third with more than $1.13 trillion in foreign holdings. The Emerald Isle, Ireland, is next, owning more than $270 billion of U.S. debt. The Cayman Islands is number 5 with more than $260 billion. And Brazil comes in 6th at more than $258 billion. President-elect Donald Trump has made several suggestions about how to decrease that $19 trillion figure. He initially told CNBC he wanted to refinance the long-term debt. But then he backtracked in an interview with the Wall Street Journal by suggesting buying back some of the debt at a discount. Trump has been highly critical of President Obama's approach to the national debt, but economists say Trump's proposals could hurt the majority stakeholder in U.S. debt, American citizens.
The atmosphere at the El Paso County Republican Debate Watch Party was fun and festive. It felt less like a political gathering and more like a county fair. There were more than 100 people, there were food stalls vending Donald dogs and Pence popcorn, a guy welcoming people in an Uncle Sam outfit. They even put up sideshows making light of Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton's recent political gaffes.
We're having a debate watching party, and we're going to have fun when we do it. We have Hillary in jail, and we've got her in there guarded with an individual around bars, and she's got an orange suit on. And again, it's all in fun. But again, she's done some things that anybody else, particularly with the cell phone use and the that particular issue, on her email issues, anybody else in her position would have gone to jail.
That's El Paso County Republican Chair Adolfo Tellez. He says their debate watch parties are well attended, but Tellez says broader reach in El Paso has been trickier. According to the US Census Bureau, El Paso County is more than 80% Hispanic.
With Latinos, with Hispanics, it is an issue. What we talk about is values. People need to be aware of what the values of the two parties are.
Tellez says Republicans' maintenance of Christian values and advocacy for small business owners should be resonating with Hispanic voters. But Trump's rhetoric over ending US-Mexico trade deals and building a wall along the US-Mexico border have overshadowed those appeals.
If he cuts off trade deals, it's not going to just disadvantage this region, it's going to disadvantage the United States. I'm not sure that the wall is the right answer, but I think border security is a serious concern.
Still, El Paso County Republican voter turnout actually went up to more than 7% during the primary. It was only 2.7% in 2012. Tellez says the debate revealed a more articulate and presidential Trump that might be more palatable to voters in El Paso.
Trump was not my initial candidate, and there were issues that things he did during the primaries that I thought were inappropriate. But if you listen to what he's saying now, if you just listen to the ads, they keep bringing up what occurred in the primaries. But if you listen to what's going on now, it's a different position, it's a different direction, it's a different presentation. He is presenting himself presidential. He's under control, he's not passing out, he's got the physical stamina to do things, and he's presenting things in a proper manner. And that's exactly what he should be doing, and he's doing it well.
Tellez says Trump performed well beyond his expectations, but according to a CNN poll, 62% of voters who watched the debate deemed Hillary Clinton the winner. For KRWG, I'm Simon Thompson.
Basically, there has to be cause. And again, the legal counsel is a position that is strictly, regardless of type of the secretary, vice chair, and so forth. All of those are appointed along with the legal counsel by the chairman at the organizing committee, right? But while the others, if there's a vacancy in them, are filled by the CEC. The legal counsel, I didn't see anywhere where it said anything about it. So
joining us right now is former Texas Congressman and presidential candidate himself, Ron Paul. Sir, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning.
We've been debating the rules all morning and every day, and the rules are 1237. What do you think? Would Donald Trump get it, even if it's falling short under that number?
Well, if that's his net total and he's short, no, I don't think he will, and I don't think he should. But, they're dealing with these rules, but the rules in politics are just made to be broken, just like the rules in government. Generally, I think the political system is sort of like the government. They're broken, they're arbitrary, and they favor one group over another. And, of course, I went through that 4 years ago about how at the last minute they can change the rules. So it's a messy business for sure. And I think that the people are starting to wake up, but I think it might be a little bit late to really restore sanity to this country economically and in other areas.
So walk us through what you did go through, because it's true. You actually faced very similar situation, and we're having this controversy about the delegates right now. Even if you get the popular vote, you're not getting the delegates.
Right, but we were well aware of the rules, and we actually thought rules were made to be followed, and the system had been made so that a competing candidate that might not have all the money and all the, prestige would still have a chance. So they said, well, you know, if you get 5 states and you have plurality, you get to be recognized and give a speech, and something happens at a convention, it gives you a little bit of a chance.
Yeah.
And we had a little bit of a chance, nothing like what Trump has done, but we qualified to participate in the convention. But they got hysterical. You know, I think it was because we were dealing with issues and they didn't want to deal with that, and they didn't want to touch anything, so they panicked. They say, we can't have Ron Paul give a speech.
Wow.
We can't have him nominated. That'd be horrible. So they went and changed the rules, and of course the rules now are biting them because it's hurting them because they want to do the same thing.
Yeah.
So I think that is, the rules aren't necessarily bad. I think they were set up. The other thing that people don't understand is the way they're set up is some of these states, if they choose to make their election a straw vote, that's essentially what was going on. I know that's essentially what was on in Iowa, and we played it. Actually, we won Iowa. We had, 80% of the delegates because we knew the system.
Right.
But they just changed the rules at the latest minute. But it was a straw vote, and a lot of these states do. There's nothing wrong with straw votes.
Wow.
And so I think Trump is off base when he says, it's rigged. There's a lot of rigging going on, but I don't think he understands how the rigging works.
Congressman, we've got Frank Luntz with us this morning. Frank.
Congressman, it's a pleasure to see you. It's been a while.
Thank
I
you,
got to
Frank.
ask you, who's the freedom candidate in this race? You were the freedom candidate 4 years ago. Who's that person this time?
Rand Paul, but you know what happened to him. So I guess I've been really pretty shocked because I've looked at the 20th century as the death of totalitarianism, fascism and communism, and how foolish socialism is and how foolish Keynesianism is. And I said, nobody's bragging about being a socialist. And people were coming around and saying, I like libertarians. I'm libertarian on this. I'm a libertarian on this. So I'm rather shocked that this country, this to me describes how sick the country is and how panicked they are, where they can rally around and say, well, it looks like we need socialism. But it reflects what's going on in our universities. I'm afraid that's the problem.
So make some news. Is it possible? Would you consider voting for the libertarian candidate if Donald Trump is the nominee?
Certainly.
There you go.
Why not? Why not? Why should I throw my vote away? I think people's votes should count. And people who say if they're progressive and they vote Green Party, I wasted my vote. Not if you're disgusted. What if you have a Hillary? She's not a progressive. I mean, she's a neocon. She could run as a Republican. So why throw their vote away? Vote Green Party. Right. If you're a libertarian or a true constitutionalist, vote libertarian. Make your vote count. But just to vote for the lesser of evil, I just never bought into that.
Taken.
Do you, Congressman, do you think, though, we're talking about socialism, do you think that it's not just in name? Do you really fear that these policies will take root, or even regardless of who wins come November?
Well, it is a tricky thing about defining socialism. Yeah, they're going to take root because they've already taken root. It's whether we're going to stop them, whether we're going to stop the expansion of government and the control of our markets and below, zero interest rates, all the nonsense going on, and the teaching over the last 70 years that deficits don't matter, spend more money, print more money. That's where the real problem is. Yeah, that's all going to continue. The names have changed because actually Sanders is not a pure socialist. He's an extreme interventionist Keynesian who wants to plan the economy and use his authority to redistribute wealth. That is socialistic, but they still deal with corporations.
Yeah, and he's not making any secret out of it. He's out and saying he's not making a secret out of it. Michael Block is here.
Congressman. Congressman, I see the GOP as being very anti-libertarian here, as you and Frank have already pointed out. I see this emphasis on anti-immigration, pro-life, and anti-gay gay rights, for example, as being very anti-libertarian. If the Republican Party de-emphasizes that, can they become more libertarian if they focus more on saying, hey, people should do what they want to do, smaller government in these respects?
Well, I mean, a lot of times they pay me an isolationist, which was absolutely false. It's the neoconservatives who are the isolationists. They would put on sanctions, and they're the ones who are telling other people what to do. And I want free trade. I don't want managed trade. I don't want all this government managed trade like we have now. And Trump makes some points on this. But no, I think the libertarians, at least I had a modified version of it, because I think that an act of aggression is killing a live fetus. And I think we have to deal with that. So there's a different position for libertarians. They don't mark lockstep. As a matter of fact, they're even the Libertarian Party. I'm a little bit annoyed because they're getting to be a little bit more warmongering than I like. I like non-intervention. I like minding our own business and bringing our troops home. And they're not there anymore. But that's certainly what our founders advised for. Stay out of entangling alliances.
Congressman Frank Luntz just said we're going to a contested convention. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think the odds are pretty good on that. I wouldn't bet against that because the Republicans have dug a big hole for themselves, because if they let Trump walk away with it on a first vote, that's they can't tolerate that. But of course, they're going to be in deep trouble if they prevent it and take it on and elect Cruz or nominate Cruz. So they're really in a box. And I just wished people would emphasize that a lot of people would like who are libertarian and conservative. Who cares about the Republican Party? This helped destroy the Republican Party. But what about the Democratic Party? Are they much better? And I don't even deal with that. I don't like to deal with the party thing. I want to deal with the principles of free markets, sound foreign policy, and protection of civil liberties.
Right.
And when that revolution comes, believe me, it will infiltrate all parties, because the revolution of 100 years ago changed everything about the monetary system and welfareism and war, and so it is in both parties. So really, if we're honest with ourselves, there is no difference between the two parties. And I know that's all we hear about is this argument between, but that is just all a charade.
Wow. Congressman, good to have you on the program this morning. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Ron Paul there.
Desire to participate in the process of the county convention. Then at the state convention, and I don't mean to hurt feelings or whatever, I'm not really emotional about any of you guys on this issue, but my perception is that our former, the delegates had one nominee to consider for SREC committee woman. She did not tell the delegates until after she was elected that if the state chair was that she doesn't like would be elected, she would step down. And I think had the delegates at the state convention known that beforehand, other people, I've been told, would have definitely run against her for committee woman. And that she took that choice. She took something away from the delegates of the state convention.
Let's stay on.
And then, let's stay on. But it's just that's the tone that has led us to today. And so I don't know if I kind of think you guys have some valid points about why certain things may have good reason for why they are the way they are right now. But I think how we got to here was also like then. I heard the claim that calls for whoever wants to be considered to be replaced for committee woman. I don't know firsthand, but I've heard that other people really wanted to be considered for a committee woman. It just feels like that choice was taken out of the hands of the delegates of the state convention, and the CEC, members of the precinct chairs, CEC definitely felt like they should have had more say in who becomes the next committee woman for the SREC. And all that kind of stuff I think comes out to, I hope that the compromise at the end is a compromise that takes your concerns, but also his concerns about more participation from the CEC. That's it. Thank you.
I just want to say one thing. I think these proposals that Mike has brought forward is a positive thing for this party, and it is something that needs to be done. Yes, there's chiefs and there's Indians, but the Indians eventually become chiefs. And so through that, they gain experience and they pass it on. And what this should be is a positive going forward for the whole party. And I see nothing but positive with these changes. I just want to say that. Thank you. Can I make a comment? No, did you got your hand?
No, you can't make a comment. It's our turn.
That's right.
My goodness, I've heard you enough. you're taking testimony on the 3 propositions. The first one, precinct chair coordinator. So let's go ahead and address these 3 propositions. Precinct chair coordinator. I said before we have 27% of our precincts filled with precinct chairs, and about 10 or 12 of those are brand new. We have many people who have been precinct chairs in the past, but we don't have many who've been precinct chairs in the past who've converted their precincts from blue to red. We have one here in this room right now whose precinct is primarily red. You know, those precinct chairs who in the past and in the present have led their precincts so that they've turned them or converted them, made red voters out of them. Those are the people that would be great candidates to mentor new precinct chairs and existing precinct chairs. Because let's face the facts. I'm not good at everything, and neither is anybody else here. I'm good at some things, and I'm not perfect at any of them. And if anybody here thinks that you're perfect at everything, then you're lying only to yourself, because I'm definitely not fooled. I've lived a long enough life that I'm probably older than most of the people in this room, believe it or not. And I know that when we go for change, there's always going to be resistance. There's always going to be that tension that exists. But in that tension, there can be progress. Precinct chair coordinator is that mentor that can reach out to other precinct chairs. Lisa says that she sends out emails and people don't respond. There are 2 positions, Mr. McGregor pointed out, that are elected in this county. One is precinct chair, which is the most important position in the county because it's at the precinct level that we convert votes by tapping on doors and by knowing our neighbors. Hello, I'm your new precinct chair. I'm your neighbor. It's not at the county chair position that happens. It happens in those little nucleuses of that precinct. So both positions, county chair and precinct chair, are equally important. And I don't think anybody here should make light of a precinct chair. A precinct chair coordinator should be somebody who's walked that walk and led a precinct to success, who can then mentor others. Maybe I moved in El Paso County, which I haven't because I moved into El Paso County. But maybe I moved from one house to another and moved to a different precinct. And while I had a pretty good precinct down the road, now I'm in an all-blue one. Where do I start now? You know, none of us is that good that we know everything. Precinct chair coordinator, I believe, should be, and I'm going to use the word I, and I'm not ashamed of it, I believe should be somebody who actually held a position as precinct chair in the past or currently and would like to step out of it but has somebody weaned to take over their position. Because as precinct chairs, those of us who are here who are precinct chairs, we know that to run a good and viable precinct, we should have vice chairs in our precinct, we should have neighborhood captains in our precinct, and we should have block commanders in our precinct. So we're already training Indians to become leaders because a good leader creates additional good leaders to step up through the ranks and grow. That's my thing on precinct chair coordinator. Campaign coordinator. We just came through 2018. I didn't realize we lost every single Republican seat in this county until I got back and got these statistics, which I have with me. And I carry them with me and I review them regularly because I want to know how many votes is it going to take for me to change even one office in this county. And that was a list of almost every seat we've got. That means that it matters to me and it needs to matter to all of us. We are the Republican Party of El Paso. The Republican Party of El Paso, no offense, is not Adolfo Tellez. The Republican Party of El Paso is not the officers or the executive committee of El Paso County Republican Party. The Republican Party of El Paso is every single conservative voter in this county. And we need to recognize that and give people positions and opportunities to move up through the ranks. So I've heard in all the testimony today that we do allow that to happen. I'm a living example that that's not what happens here every day. I'm a living example of having presented myself to help and help and help, to be on committees, that I'm willing to go and be there a week in advance. I'm willing to do everything that needs to be done, and this party county doesn't give me that opportunity. So I don't want to hear that little chiefs and little Indians don't have the opportunities, or that they do, because I can say and stand here boldly and say to your face that that doesn't happen in this county every day. People like me who are willing to step up will be told there are 3 kinds of people in this county. We have people who will listen to what I have to say and they'll go along with me, that's good. Then we have the other kind of people who say, well, I have my own ideas, but they'll listen to what I have to say and eventually they'll go along with me. Or as I was told, and I'm using words that were told to me, or we have that other group of people that have their own ideas and they'll go ahead and make things happen and create the RLC.
No.
They'll go ahead and make Republican Liberty Caucus. They'll go ahead and make things happen. And I'm not going to name the name that was named. And you're one of them. I'm proud to be one of those people. I'm proud to say I'm willing to step and knock on doors. And I'm willing to reach out when a candidate calls me and says, hey, can you come help me? Absolutely. How many people do you need? A campaign coordinator is going to be that person that when somebody runs for office that's grassroots, that doesn't know exactly where to go, yeah, they're going to come to the party chair, maybe. Or maybe they're going to talk to a precinct chair. Maybe they'll talk to you or you or you. And you'll say, you know what? I don't have all that information. You sound like you want to run, but you're really not sure. How about we not occupy our party chair with somebody who's not really sure, and we send them to somebody who actually might be able to help them make a decision, yes or no. Because our party chair at the end of the day has plenty of things to do. Okay, so that's campaign coordinator. Candidate coordinator, campaign, is it candidate coordinator?
Candidate. Yeah, that's when you
So candidate coordinator, whatever the second position is, you know what I'm talking about anyway. I see that would also be a benefit. And like I said, change creates tension. Yeses and nos. No, I don't want change. Yes, I want change. We need to have compromise. We need to have compromise. There's nothing wrong with change. And the last one is the bylaws wording changes. And I'm looking at 171.024, the County Executive Committee. As Malcolm McGregor pointed out, the County Executive Committee is made up of every precinct chair and the county chair. It doesn't say the county chair shall fill by appointment. It says the County Executive Committee shall fill by appointment any vacancy on the committee. So when I came here to get the bylaws, after becoming a precinct chair and asking for several things, I was met with resistance. And there was one person who was willing to make me the bylaws, and I'm going to thank her here now because she did it that day. I'll thank her again today. Lisa Sprinkle came up and said, here, Nilda, here's the bylaws. But it wasn't after getting a lot of attention to get them. Why does that have to happen? As a precinct chair, shouldn't I know what the bylaws are? That's a problem. So it doesn't say maybe the county chair and possibly with acceptance of the precinct chairs. It says the County Executive Committee shall fill by appointment any vacancy. And I think we need to remain in compliance with the law. That is the law. That is Texas Election Code. That is the law in the state of Texas from east to west and north to south. Everywhere in Texas, that's the law. That's not something we made up here in El Paso County. And I think in El Paso County, we're not in New Mexico, we're still part of Texas. Let's do things right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The last item on the agenda is the time and place of the next meeting, but because there's two people that aren't here, I would like to poll them and schedule the meeting. I know we have the election coming up and early voting starts the 22nd. So we're going to have to work around that. But I will schedule it. I'll talk to everybody and schedule it as fast as I can. We'll put that out. After the election. Yeah, it won't be till after the election.
Motion to adjourn? Second. Mike. Oh, we don't.
For wanting to live in a free nation. If we are not careful with our free nation, we're only one generation from losing it. And today we have our schools that don't even teach our Constitution. I remember when I went to school, by third grade, I knew the Constitution of the United States of America. I could recite to you the preamble by the beginning of 3rd grade. It was a requirement. They don't even know the Constitution when they graduate high school at this point. They don't know our history. And as long as we continue to take away our statues, to take away the things that made our nation great, good, bad, indifferent, all of it made us what we are today. Our good history and our bad history is what made America great. We can't say that we were prosperous and wonderful the whole time, because we weren't. It would be a lie. Nothing good happens without being forged through the fire of pain. So does that make slavery right? No, it doesn't. But does it mean we should eliminate that history? No, we should not. Because if we forget our past, we're destined to repeat it.
As the war entered its 2nd year, many Americans still hoped to avoid a complete break with the British Empire. But even as news of the defeat in Canada reached Continental Congress in Philadelphia, support for an absolute break with Britain was growing. Where was this sentiment coming from? While the politicians bickered, people across the colonies were reading an argument for independence that was far more powerful than any yet made by an American. In January of 1776, Thomas Paine, an Englishman who had been in the American colonies for less than 2 years, assaulted the concept of peace with Britain, scoffing at the idea that King George III should be viewed as the symbolic father of the country. Of more worth is one honest man to society, and in the sight of God, than all the crowned ruffians that ever lived, Paine wrote. He went on to refer to the king as the royal brute of Great Britain, before hacking away at the idea that the mother country nurtured America and made her rich within the British Empire. Nothing can be more fallacious than that kind of argument, Paine declared. Paine stated that America suffered because of its connection to England due to the endless European wars that it had been dragged into. He also argued that the distance between America and England, along with their stark difference in size, were other arguments for independence. There is something absurd in supposing a continent to be perpetually governed by an island, he wrote. Paine insisted that a new era in politics is struck, and that all proposals for reconciliation made no sense since blood had been shed. Paine backed this argument with a claim that it was now America's mission to be a champion of liberty. In bold language, the 47-page pamphlet went on to call for complete independence from Britain, arguing that it was common sense to stop following the royal brute. He declared that the American struggle was not simply one over taxes, but a struggle for freedom. Paine argued that citizens, not kings and queens, should make their laws. The pamphlet caught the attention of Americans, changing the way many of them viewed the king. It made very strong arguments for creating economic freedom for America, as well as the colonists' right to military self-defense. Paine cried out against tyranny, and the public listened as 120,000 copies of Common Sense rolled off the presses in the first 3 months. This is equivalent to selling almost 20 million books in modern America. Common Sense went through 25 printings in 1776 alone, selling more than 500,000 copies in America and Europe. It was printed in multiple newspapers and read at town meetings throughout the colonies. Paine published the work anonymously and donated the royalties to George Washington's army, not only galvanizing the call to war, but helping to fund it as well.
There's also a quote that's often erroneously attributed to George Washington, but it summarizes our founder's ideas really well. Government is not reason. It is not eloquence. It is force. Like fire, it is a dangerous servant and a fearful master. Never for a moment should it be left to irresponsible action. The U.S. Constitution is relevant today because, like the ring of stones around this campfire, it's the only thing keeping the fire of government from destroying everything as far as the eye can see. Most people around the world don't have the rights that we've enjoyed in our republic, like freedom of speech, freedom of religion, the right to keep and bear arms, etc. Unchecked government has been responsible for more deaths than anything else in human history, including hundreds of millions of souls through war and the murder of its own people. Our founders knew this. They lived it. They feared government, so they erected these stones to keep it in its place. Without this ring of stones limiting and restricting the fire, it will spread and destroy. Without our Constitution, government will do what it naturally does. Our Constitution, like the ring of stones, keeps all federal laws, departments, and officials subservient to it. Just as contracts between landlords and tenants or employers and employees are binding, the Constitution is the contract by the citizenry, which grants only specified powers to the federal government. The Bill of Rights limits it further by guaranteeing specific rights and reserving everything else, including other rights and powers not mentioned, to the citizenry or to the states. The U.S. Constitution is also relevant because all federal laws are subservient to it. As the supreme law of the land, rulings made by the United Nations or treaties by our own government that are contrary to it have no binding authority and are therefore meaningless. Finally, the U.S. government has in many ways become exactly what the U.S. Constitution was designed to protect us from. And the reason is that we've failed to allow the Constitution to do its job of limiting government, just like the ring of stones that contains the fire. Today, our government is full of judges and both elected and unelected bureaucrats who, despite having taken an oath to support and defend the Constitution, regularly subvert our rights through decree or interpretation, just as Great Britain did. But the U.S. Constitution also contains many powerful legal tools for the American citizenry to fix our current problems. These include the right to free speech, the right to protest, freedom of the press, the right to call grand juries, the power to remove government officials through impeachment, as well as the means to amend the Constitution itself. Americans just need to be reminded about these tools, that you have the power. I'm Matt Fitzgibbons from PatriotMusic.com. Thanks for watching.